Hey everyone, it's triplemangothreat, and today we're going over 10 commanders I think are fun to build around. Let's talk about commanders that steal our opponent's creatures. Mariek Barrett. When we tap her, we gain control of a creature as long as we control Mariek. When she leaves play or becomes untapped, we have to destroy that creature. By herself, it's an okay card, nothing to freak out about, but you can add silly cards that untap her, and there are a lot. Freed from the Reel, Vizier of Tumbling Sands, Penim's Aura, and Fate Stitcher. So we can effectively destroy our opponent's board full of creatures with this untapping, or just take a huge creature of theirs that they thought they could use against us. But remember, when she's untapped, we have to destroy the creature we're controlling with her, unless we have cards like Darker Valkyrie, Restoration Angel, Cloud Shift, and Conjurer's Closet. All of these cards make it to where they get exiled and come back under our control. So we can then untap Mariek, and the creature we exiled won't be destroyed because it's a new object. So let's be nice to our opponent, give them some time to say goodbye to their creatures because it's the nice thing to do. Next up for stealing our opponent's creatures is Brian Stoutarm. He has lifelink, and we can pay a red and tap him to sack another creature, and he deals damage to a player for whatever the creature's power was. Now, we could sacrifice our creatures, but I'd rather sacrifice my opponent's creatures. Now you're probably thinking, you can't sacrifice an opponent's creature, you have to control them. Well, let's talk about how we get control of them. Captivating Crew, Zealous Conscripts, Molten Primordial, and Act of Treason. Once we have control of our opponent's creatures, we can then sacrifice them and hit our opponents. Or, if we need to hold on to their creatures, we have a Darker Valkyrie, Luminous Broodmoth, Conjurer's Closet, and Cloud Shift. Once we permanently control their creatures after using cards like this, we can always set them up to be sacrificed by Brian with multiple ways to untap him with Thornbite Staff and 1000-Year Elixir. The crazy thing about Thornbite Staff is when a creature dies, we untap the creature it's attached to. So having this attached to our commander Brian, we untap every time we sacrifice a creature. And as long as we have a red mana available, we can do this so many times, and it makes our opponents sad. Playing my opponent's spells is my favorite thing to do in Magic, well, besides drawing cards. So let's talk about Gaunty, Lord of Luxury. When he enters the battlefield, we look at an opponent's top 4 cards of their library, we exile one of them and put the rest randomly on the bottom of their library. So of course I'm going to abuse this ETB with Panharmonicon, Erratic Portal, Conjurer's Closet, and Helm of the Host. All of these cards are insane with Gaunty as the target. Being able to repeat his ETB is the key to winning, and it's just fun to play someone else's cards. Helm of the Host gives us more copies of him, and they're non-legendary. So every combat we get another Gaunty trigger. Another important thing when building this deck is to make a ton of mana. Since we'll be hard casting our opponent's spells, but luckily the mana we make can be any color when casting their spells. This does not count for the abilities the card may make us pay. So let's talk about Magus of the Coffers, Nirkana Revenant, Black Market, and Liliana of the Dark Realm. These cards can really help us when it comes to getting us more mana. And if we ult Liliana, the game's just over. If one swamp of ours can produce 4 black mana, just dump it all into Exsanguinate or Torment of Hailfire. These are mono black staples that end games when we have insane amounts of mana. Next up for playing our opponent's spells is Halden and Paco. When Paco attacks, every player exiles the top card of their library, and Halden lets us cast those non-creature spells. So you can do silly things like extra combat steps to trigger Paco with. We have Aggravated Assault, Hellkite Charger, Savage Beating, Seize the Day, and we can even go infinite with combat steps with Aggravated Assault and Savage Ventmaw. When we want to cast more spells, we can untap our mana at our end step with Wilderness Reclamation. And this is nice because we have all of our exiled cards, and it's just like an extra hand. Getting more mana really helps out with all the spells we have to cast. This next category I didn't know how to label, so let's just go with different but cool. Hirobi, Death's Wail. He says when a creature becomes the target of a spell or ability, that creature is destroyed. So you can imagine the silly spells that are in this deck. Tragic Slip, Defile, Aphotic Wisps, and Blade Brand. We can target our opponent's creatures for 1 or 2 black mana and they die. But not just removal spells can do this. If any creature tries to get an equipment or an enchantment, they die. I was confused by this at first because when I think of targeting, I think of destroy target creature. But no, when you go to equip or cast an aura on a creature, you are targeting them. So be careful if you try to target Hirobi because he will be destroyed as well. His trigger can also be effective on him. So if our opponents have an ability that targets any creature, it's going to be a rough game for us. Next on Different But Cool, we have Borborygmos Enraged. He costs a lot of mana, but his ability is really cool. When he deals combat damage to a player, we reveal the top 3 cards of our library and put all the lands in our hand, the rest go in our graveyard. But he has this ability. Discard a land, Borborygmos Enraged deals 3 damage to target creature or player. Why this is so cool is because we can literally bolt our opponents by discarding a land. Some great ways to get lands in our hand are Sprouting Vines, Storm Cauldron, Abundance, and Keen Sense. Sprouting Vines has Storm, so we can get a few lands off of this card if we cast cards before this spell. Storm Cauldron is a card I'd recommend you play when you know you can win, because when you get your lands tapped, you have to return them to your hand, but we can always discard them and hit our opponents. The crazy thing about this card is that it affects all players, so our opponents have to be really careful. Abundance and Keen Sense just win us the game, and here's how. With Borborygmos' ability, he's dealing damage, and Keen Sense says when an enchanted creature deals damage to an opponent, draw a card. Then we go to Abundance. When we draw a card, we choose land or non-land. We will choose land every time. And when we discard a land with Borborygmos' ability, we hit an opponent, draw a card, and we select a land to be drawn again. Our next category is Spells Equal Damage. Let's talk about Rurik Thar the Unbowed. When a player casts a non-creature spell, our commander deals 6 damage to them. This really discourages players to cast their non-creature spells. Like that counter spell your opponent was going to cast, well, they're going to lose 6 life just to counter a spell. Your deck is really just your creatures doing things non-creature spells would normally do. We have Mana Dorks rather than Mana Rock with Llanowar Elves. We have removal with our creatures rather than removal spells with Reclamation Sage. Card draw from our creatures like Soul of the Harvest. You get the point. Our creatures are self-sustaining and we try not to use any non-creature spells in the deck. Next is Kumbal, Console of Allocation. When an opponent casts a non-creature spell, they lose 2 and we gain 2. So naturally we'll play cards that benefit us gaining life, like Sanguine Bond, Cliffhaven Vampire, Defiant Bloodlord, and Epicure of Blood. With all the life gain in the world, we can always one-shot our opponents with Aetherflux Reservoir. And again, 2 life adds up over time, and our opponents may just not realize it in time before we win the game, with Test of Endurance and Felidar Sovereign. Those cards are based on our life total, but with all the life gain, it's easy to have 50 or more life when playing this deck. Our last category is Hugs, with Kanios and Tiro of Meletis. This is a great example of a Hugs deck. At our end step, we draw a card and we put a land from our hand into play. Our opponents can only do 1 of those. This commander can often deter our opponents from killing us or our commander because we have the benefit of our end step trigger. You can expect cards like Rites of Flourishing, Howling Mine, Veteran Explorer, and Magus of the Vineyard. There's just an absurd amount of mana and card draw in a deck like this. I never plan on winning, but that's the fun part about it. Watching your playgroup duke it out and you're on the sidelines supporting the chaos, pretty much if you end up winning, it's a surprise to everyone. Last, we have Selvala, Explorer Returned. When we tap her, she says, each player reveals the top card of their library. For each non-land card revealed this way, add green and you gain 1 life. Then each player draws a card. So of course, I want to abuse her ability with cards like Seeker of Skybreak, Umbral Mantle, 1000-Year Elixir, and Seedborn Muse. Umbral Mantle is really easy to abuse because we get mana through Selvalla's ability, if we at least get 3 non-land cards. This can be easily repeated and draw everyone a huge amount of cards. More on the side of Group Hug, we have cards like Tempt with Discovery, Dictate of Karametra, Eladamri's Vineyard, and Upwelling. The plan with this deck is just to have fun and hope your opponents won't attack you. You really just encourage everyone to hit everyone else except you, and you just keep putting the fuel in the fire. I just want to say thank you so much, and you guys are awesome. The 300 subscriber video was well received, and I was a little nervous about it, but you guys had such nice things to say, and I want to keep making content you guys love. If you want to suggest a deck for me, please comment below. Hey, you made it to the end of the video. If you liked this video, you can leave a thumbs up. If you think I missed a card or you want to make a suggestion for the next deck tech, comment below. If you want to see more of this mango content, you can subscribe to see when I post a new video. Thank you so much for your continued support. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.